And tickets are listed in the lobby of the theater and on circulars at the concession.
Here we go with another live episode of The Chronic Rift. Welcome everybody, this is your old pal John S. Drew here, and this is going to be a day for trying some new things here, including doing the show solo. I was supposed to have Keith DeCandido with me this morning, but he had some other commitments he had to take care of. He will actually be on the show a little later on in a taped segment, because this is our in review episode. And while I'm at it, let me tell you about some of the other things I'm doing differently. I'm using a headphone mic set here rather than my usual mic setup, because the sound quality I thought in the first two episodes was terrible. So hopefully this is a little better this time. Getting ready for work. Okay. And yes, Mike Fichera, I got to thank you for finding the theme song to The Chronic Rift. Now, this was the updated version that Mike's brother Victor and a friend, and I can't remember his friend's name at the moment. Mike, if you're there and you can text that in, just let me know. But this is an updated version that they had done from the theme song from the back in the day of the public access show. So, anyway, this is our in-review show. Now, for those of you that maybe have never been listening to, you can tell I'm an English teacher, I've never listened to the show before. Our in-review show is basically where we review certain things in pop culture, be it from movies, television, books, comic books, what have you, bring it to your attention, and then usually we've got a group of people here who discuss it. So we're going to try something a little different. I'm going to play the reviews for you here, and I'll do a little talking about what I think based on what they've said here, but I'm going to open it up to you guys that are watching, and if you want to join in, you can either do it by text or you can Skype in if you're interested. I've got Skype all set up. If you're interested in doing that, send me a message over at the Chronic Rift page here on Facebook. But let's get things started as we always do on every episode here. We're going to bring something to the table. In fact, I'm going to bring a couple of things to the table that I was actually going to do over the course of a couple of episodes, but since it's just me, I figured let me start off with this. Now, as you know, I'm a huge Batman 66 fan, and if you watch that little test show that Kevin Lauderdale and I did a few weeks ago on a Saturday night, you may have even seen me talking about these then, but I'm going to go into a little more detail. These are the Funko Batman 66 figures. Now, Funko, usually when you think of them, you think of the big pop vinyl ones with the giant heads and such like that, but they do a lot of other figures and toy lines as well. And these are 3 7/4 inch model figures, and these in particular, the ones I'm holding up here, are the ones I'm most proud of because they are what they call chase figures, which I don't understand the whole concept. You want these folks to, buy the figures and such, why do the chase? But there are some collectors who get into it. What a chase basically means is this: for every, say, maybe 1,000 figures you buy of, like here, this is Mr. Freeze. Okay, this is the Otto Preminger. There were 3 Mr. Freeze actors who played Mr. Freeze. This was Otto Preminger, the second one, and probably by most the most popular, just because he was so off the wall. And let me zoom in a little bit here with him here. He actually kind of looks like what we expect these days well, or at least he certainly is the template that they followed then on from there, and especially when you got to Batman the Animated Series and such, and they really delved into Victor Freeze's background. In fact, actually, in the 66 series, they called him Dr. Schimmel. They didn't call him Dr. Freeze. He was Mr. Freeze. That was it. So anyway, so this is just one of the regular figures in the line. They've got a Catwoman one. They've got a Bookworm, a King Tut. They've, of course, got Batman and Robin and Batgirl. This is wave 1. Now, along with the regular figures, let's say you buy 1,000 of the figures, whether, I don't know if it's just 1,000 Mr. Freezes or 1,000 of the lot or 100 or whatever, but for every packing order that you got, they would include one Chase figure. It's just a unique figure that stands out. It's weird. Chase is supposed to be the thrill. Yeah, exactly. I know. Mike's pointing out to me it's supposed to be the thrill of the hunt. Mike, you should just come on. But anyway, but yeah, no, I understand that the threat. But you know, I'm 50 years old now. Just celebrated my birthday recently. You know, I don't really like hunting down, but I had to. In particular, I had to have these two because, first of all, it's the Eli Wallach figure, right? And the Chase figure for Batman is him wearing his, I don't want to call it a pilot, test footage stuff. I should have actually drawn up some video of that, or at least a picture of him and Burt Ward in their original costumes. Because the costumes they wear on the TV show are not the costumes they wore in the test footage. But in particular, what I loved, and it was Ian McLean, who I'm friends with here on Facebook, and who's a huge Batman figures guy, got me the idea of doing this. One of the things about this particular version, Eli Wallach, who played him in the third and final Mr. Freeze story in the second season, it was actually the last episode of the second season, was he had a pet seal named Isolde. So I went out and got Isolde. I think the scale is just about right, but I was thrilled. These figures are fun. Are they absolute? But actually, I shouldn't say that, because let's zoom in here. Let's take a look at Eli Wallach. That's pretty damn good. Wow. Actually, would you do that really up close with the... Ooh. I know. All right. And people are listening to the podcast and going, you know, later on in the week and going, what the hell is he doing? For that matter, the same thing with Otto Preminger. Pretty damn good detail there on the face. You know, there's only so much detail you can do with Batman because his face is covered in the cowl. But if you look at it, the jawline and such, it looks like Adam West. I mean, you could also argue it looks like Michael Keaton, but anyway, all right, off we go. Anyway, those are the Funko figure lines. Wave 1 is already out, but we're hoping for Wave 2 soon. Now, as he takes a sip from his cup, by the way, this week, like I said, different things. I got a different Hawaiian shirt on. I'm also drinking from a different mug. This is my $6 Million Man travel mug. Yeah, the other thing, $6 Million Man. But anyway, we're hoping for that second line soon. Funko did promise that there would be one. I'm assuming the sales on these things were really good, so that we should be all right there with that. But anyway, if you haven't had a chance to pick these up yet, you really should, because if you're a Batman 66 fan, lot of fun. Now, the other thing I want to bring to your attention, I got this recently. Amazon had a great deal on it. I think I paid like $25 or something, maybe a little over that, was the Battlestar Galactica Blu-ray set. These things, oh my God. I mean, I love Battlestar Galactica in general. It was a great show. You know, ultimately what did it in was just the production cost, the money that it cost to do this show. But to have it in Blu-ray, to have it, you know, touched up, widescreen, I mean, it's gorgeous. The colors pop, the sound is beautiful. I've only got one nitpick, and I brought this up on my personal Facebook page. This is Battlestar Galactica, yes, the original series on Blu-ray, and for whatever reason, they thought, hey, the kids will love it. Galactica 1980. 1980. What? 1980. All right? With the exception of the Return of Starbuck, which I don't remember. I blotted out most of 1980. and I don't mean the year, I mean this show, what were they thinking? All right, so now I put it out there to you at Universal Productions, okay? If you really, really thought that people wanted Galactica 1980, where Galactica found Earth, and the descendants of Apollo and Starbuck, I think. Like I said, I blotted most of it out. I know Lauren Green was in it, and he sported a beard. I know Robbie Rist was in a couple of episodes till he was replaced by another kid because he played this computer genius or something. But if you really thought that the world wanted you to spend money cleaning up Galactica 1980 and making it available on Blu-ray, and smart thinking though, because there's no way you would have sold this separately. There is no way that this was going to be a must-buy for anybody. But if you really think, Universal, that this is what people wanted, let me tell you what people want. And yes, I represent the people today. $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman. We have both sets out now. You need to take the masters, you need to clean them up, you need to widescreen them, you need to put them on Blu-ray. We need $6 Million Man. I need to see the soles of Andre the Giant's shoes underneath his costume, all right, in detail on Blu-ray. All right, and plus there were also, in particular, the Bionic Woman releases, I think it was, there were some audio issues. So it would be nice if you went back and cleaned those up since you didn't do it on the actual original sets. So yeah, my 2 cents. Get those Funko figures. Get Battlestar Galactica on Blu-ray itself. I mean, yeah, if you're a masochist or, I don't know, you want to live out a childhood trauma, go for it, I guess. Watch 1980. Go figure. Anyway, sip. All right. So let's get into the in-review portion here of the show. Like I said, what we do is we bring in people who are going to talk about TV, books, comic books. We're going to get started here with Dan Persons. Now, Dan has been with the show since the days of the public access show. He actually started coming on the show regularly during our 2nd season. He came in at the end of the 1st as a fan, and then we just started talking. We all hit it off with him, and he started doing movie reviews then. He's been doing movie reviews with us ever since. So we're going to take a look at a new Japanese anime feature that's oh, hang on. Let me bail here. No, I'm not going to bail, but let me just chatter on here a few more moments, because for some reason Dan's review did not come up on my thing. That is weird. All right, okay, now I have it. So let's take a look at what Dan has to talk about this new Japanese anime film, which I've got a few thoughts on, and looking at the trailer here, which is also included, I found a little odd.
Come on, Peter, let's go. Mary, stop! Everyone knows you're not supposed to go into the woods on misty days. I found it in the woods.
The witch's flower. They only bloom once every 7 years. They say witches used to seek it out.
What is going on? Tonight, I really am a witch.
This is Indoor College, one of the most prestigious schools for witches.
How do you do, Miss Mary?
This is amazing.
You're a once-in-a-century talent. A remarkable witch. In this world, there exist certain powers that can never be harnessed. That girl has discovered where the flowers are.
This little flower will change the world.
Peter! We have to go. Come on, Tib.
Away!
You're going to be the subject of my most important magical experiment.
That girl could ruin everything.
I mustn't give up. I made a promise. We are going home together, all of us. Give me your hand!
I'm Dan Persons, movie reviewer for Hour of the Wolf. The basic idea behind the auteur theory is that a movie's director is the author of his or her film. Every person who contributes to that film, actors, writers, cinematographers, composers, all the various technical posts, works to fulfill that vision. This is the theory, and unlike scientific theories, which are either proven or not proven in time, for artistic endeavors there needs to be quite a bit of wiggle room. Animation in particular can be a serious test of the theory. The director puts his/her mark on visuals, but then the animators beneath him/her will take his/her initial drawings and flesh them out, ideally bringing personality and life to the movements. It raises serious questions of authorship. Did director Bob Clampett make Daffy Duck Daffy, or is that animator Rod Scribner's brilliant work? I tend to be orthodox about these things. I cleave to the idea that the director rules all. But things can happen that do make me question my stand sometimes. The first few minutes of Mary and the Witch's Flower, which opens theatrically this Friday, look for all the world like legendary anime director Hayao Miyazaki is running through a catalog of his greatest hits. There's a young girl's desperate escape from mysterious and ominous captors like Laputa, Castle in the Sky. There's a ravishing flight scene on a broomstick like Kiki's Delivery Service. And there's an attack by strange, pliable creatures like Spirited Away. But this is not Miyazaki. This is director Hiromasa Yonebayashi, whose previous directorial effort, When Marnie Was There, also aped the look and storytelling style of Miyazaki's Studio Ghibli. And here's the point. Yonebayashi does not come by this miraculous emulation by accident. He contributed as animator to many Studio Ghibli films, and even directed one, The Secret World of Arrietty, under the Studio Ghibli banner. And yet, if one didn't know Miyazaki hadn't directed Mary and the Witch's Flower, which is about a young girl who discovers both a blossom that bestows her magical powers and a broomstick that whisks her away to a school for witches where the headmasters are plotting an ominous fate for non-magic users. If you didn't know Miyazaki hadn't directed it, you'd be hard-pressed to make the distinction. And it goes beyond just the look. The broomstick flight sequences have the same joyous kineticism. The settings revel in the same kind of lush storybook detail. The characters emote with the same full-body conviction. Which raises the question, if this is Miyazaki without Miyazaki, where is the Miyazaki in actual Miyazaki? Where does the artistry of the animators end and the director actually begin? One answer may be in a certain soul that the Miyazaki films possess that Yonebayashi is still working towards. Miyazaki goes beyond technical visual excellence to an understanding of his characters and their motivations, imbuing them with a sense of life. Yonebayashi's When Marnie Was There, for instance, felt a little too much like the director was ticking off a checklist of style and storytelling tropes, without going the distance of giving us the human connection behind everything. And the impression lingers with Mary and the Witch's Flower, most prominently in that opening sequence. But it does seem that Yonebayashi is gradually edging away from mere slavish replication into something that conveys some form of human grounding. And if you can set aside the overweening clonishness of the production, the film itself stands on its own as a captivating fantasy. Yonebayashi brings a unique look to the wielding of magic, an energetic, bordering on violent visualization that captures a sense of awesome powers at work, and his vision of steampunkish technology has a lot of character to it. Work still needs to be done, though. A late Miyazaki-esque attempt to reform the antagonists feels abrupt and awkward, and one of the attempts to break away from the Ghibli style with the whimsical choreography of a tanuki-like broomstick caretaker feels out of step with the rest of the production, with Miyazaki having once more announced his retirement, And to be honest, the man has retired almost as often as Barbra Streisand. It is kind of nice to feel that the beauty of his style won't completely vanish from the world of animation. Mary and the Witch's Flower demonstrates that if Yonebayashi can somehow bring his own heart into the proceedings, the promise that the Ghibli house style can live on won't be an empty one. And if you happen to be in Philadelphia on January 24th, come join me as we kick off a new film program in the city, Attack of the Classics, bringing great, intense, and sometimes just plain strange movies back to the big screen where they always belonged. First up will be Dario Argento's horror classic, Suspiria. See it the way it was meant to be seen, cringing in your theater seat. Again, that's on January 24th. Shows at 7 o'clock and 9:30 at the AMC Broad Street 7 at the intersection of North Broad Street and Cecil B. Moore, right across from Temple University. Be there, or be a shape that doesn't possess a pleasant, round outline. For Hour of the Wolf, I'm Dan Persons, #ITMFA.
So, okay, visually it looks beautiful, but Dan hit on it actually right in the midst of the review when he referred to the Muggles and corrected himself. That's where I thought it was odd. Now, I'm not professing to be any expert on anime. I have seen, though, Kiki's Delivery Service. I've seen many of the more recent movies and such. And of course, I'm a huge fan of the old school anime like Record of Lodoss War and such, Gotcha Man. But I thought it was odd that the choice for voice this time, making a rhyme, was British. They're all British. And I wonder, taking Dan's question a step further, as to who creates the characters and such, was there a conscious effort on the part of the producers to try to Harry Potter this movie up? I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Is it possible? Am I just reading? Then again, I read into everything way too much. I'm obsessed with the book Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. In particular, I'm obsessed with the mule trope that we see throughout the book, which many people say isn't really a trope. And I'm like, oh, come on. She definitely connects herself with mules. And when I say her, I don't mean just the main character, but Zora Neale Hurston herself. She's got another book called Mule Bones. So there's more to it. But sometimes I read into things a little too much, and I'm told, need to relax. Okay, so Dan's chiming in here on the chat, and he says that the publishers are actually hawking this as Harry Potter meets Spirited Away. Well, there you go. That then answers my question. They clearly were going for that vibe. Now, the question is, does that take away from what the animators, the story writers, intended? See, this is what I always love about Hollywood. I teach a media class the second half of the year at my high school, and I tell the kids, you could be starting out a story about two people, a man and a woman, falling in love. The screenwriter turns in the story, and by the time it makes it to screen, it's the story of two runaway dogs who run into each other and manage to find long-lasting friendship. That's the way Hollywood works. It's suddenly like, because you've got all these other people who's got their hands in the creative process. It's like you bought the story. How about you have enough confidence in it to market it the right way instead of trying to spin it? So that doesn't concern me a little, because I'm also not the hugest Harry Potter fan. And Dan says this is also based on a young adult novel from the 70s, but not sure if that was set in Britain. Okay, so maybe there is something then to possibly keeping it in its British roots. But overall, though, it certainly looks fascinating. I'll definitely give it a look. And I will say to you folks, if you're in the Philadelphia area, check out Suspiria this coming Wednesday. Do the math, because today's the 21st, and that's on the 24th. I want to thank Dan, and I also want to thank Jim Freund from Hour of the Wolf for sharing these reviews with us here on the Chronic Rift. I'll put up links so that you can listen to Hour of the Wolf, which is a great science fiction radio talk show, but you can catch it on the internet through their streaming service as well. Keith and I and Andrea actually appeared on the on the Hour of the Wolf way back in the day when we were a public access show. I think we did 2 episodes with him. Okay. Now, that's a good question. Now, Mike asks, you know what, let me put this up here so I'm not leaning over and looking like I'm constantly doing this. So Mike asks, has enough time now passed for allowable Potterish stories that aren't branded a ripoff? Remember the BSG's critics, it's just a Star Wars. Well, yeah, that's true. But clearly Battlestar Galactica was trying to cash in on Star Wars. I think even Glenn Larson will admit that one himself if he were alive. I don't look at this as a Potter ripoff. I wouldn't go that far. I just think it's using that to try and capture maybe some of the audience and say, hey, if you liked Harry Potter, you'll like this, which is fine. I mean, it's fine, especially if, as Dan points out, this may have been based on a young adult, or it was based on a young adult novel, but it may have had its roots in Britain and such. That's all fine and well and good. I just am concerned that it's like, as Dan puts it, the story, the artwork, the characterization and such. Now whose story is it when you add these other elements in? And what do you take away from it and such? But definitely, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. And like I said, I will see it because it's beautifully done. I mean, the stills I put up there and from the trailer, it looks really good. It's just, it's going to be a little getting used to hear, because I'm not used to British voices on my Japanese anime. I'm sorry. I know that just sounds so weird. It's like saying, only Americans can voice Japanese anime if you're not going to use the original actors, which is just stupid. But let's move on, he says, covering himself up here. And let me call this one up, too. I don't know what happened. I thought I had both Dan and Keith's files ready. So let me just get it here on the thing here. Keith is talking about here on our television review segment the TV show that just ended, Major Crimes.
TNT Monday, from the creators of The Closer, comes the new season of Major Crimes.
If it wasn't a murder, what was it?
The cases have never been bigger.
I thought you hated deals.
And this is why.
I want to put the killer away for life.
And find me some evidence to prove it.
And the team has never been better.
I know it's old-fashioned.
Major Crimes.
But why don't we just ask him why he stabbed his wife to death?
Premieres Monday at 9, only on TNT.
Hi, this is Keith R.A. DeCandido with Couch Potato Salad, a critical look at genre television. I could never really get into The Closer, which is odd because I'm generally a huge fan of police procedurals. It all started when I was a kid watching Barney Miller and Hill Street Blues, and it was all downhill from there. But I don't like all of them. Some of them just don't work for me on some level or other. For example, Southland never grabbed me, Blue Bloods has bored the crap out of me every time I've tried to watch it, and it's about New York cops. This should be right in my wheelhouse. And I have no interest in the new 911 despite a stellar cast. In the case of The Closer, my issue was simple. I cannot stand to listen to Kyra Sedgwick talk. It's not a rational thing. It has nothing to do with her talent or anything that's actually in her control. It's just that every time I hear her voice, I want to strangle a small defenseless animal. My wife has similar issues with Lori Petty, for what that's worth. After Sedgwick decided to leave The Closer, following its 7th season, TNT continued the series under a new title of Major Crimes. Mary McDonald's Sharon Rader, who had been a recurring character in the 5th and 6th seasons, and was made into a regular in Season 7, took over the Major Crimes division of the LAPD from Sedgwick's Brenda Lee Johnson. Most of the cast from The Closer came over to the new show, and a few new characters were created. Oddly, one character who never appeared on Major Crimes was J.K. Simmons' Will Pope, who was elevated to Chief of Police by the end of The Closer's run. The character was mentioned several times, most recently during the 5th season search for a new Assistant Chief of Operations after Robert Gossett's Russell Taylor was killed, but never seen, probably due to Simmons' movie career taking off. Or maybe he's too busy doing commercials for Farmers Insurance. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Anyway, with Sedgwick gone, my interest was piqued, as the show no longer had a lead whose voice made my teeth hurt. That pique turned into massive enthusiasm as Major Crimes quickly became must-see TV for me. One of my favorite books is David Simon's Homicide, A Year on the Killing Streets. The book was the inspiration for two of the greatest cop shows in TV history, NBC's Homicide: Life on the Streets and HBO's The Wire. And the thing that both the book and both shows got right and gave to us was the reality that police work isn't a calling. It's a job, with everything that it being a job entails. Politics, dealing with idiot coworkers, an absurd focus on statistics and numbers, the perception of reality being more important than actual reality, that suspects lie all the time, and that cops also lie all the time, only the cops are actually allowed to. And most importantly, the cops are concerned with closing cases and making arrests, not solving mysteries. And that everything a cop does is ultimately motivated by how much easier it will make their lives and how little paperwork they'll have to fill out. Major Crimes takes all these notions to heart. One of Rader's goals with MCD is to help with the declogging the courts by making plea bargain deals with their suspects. In the early days of the show, this was a source of contention between Rader and the second-in-command of the division, Lieutenant Louis Provenza. Speaking of Provenza, he is the real star of the show as far as I'm concerned. An aggressively old-school cop, he's still open to new ideas and notions, generally as long as other people actually implement them, and he's also what real-life cops often refer to as natural-born police, of which there are generally only about 2 or 3 every generation. Provenza's instincts are always spot on, and one of the running themes of Major Crimes is that Provenza is almost always right. He's also almost always cranky, and G.W. Bailey, who's probably best known for his recurring role in the later years of MASH as Sergeant Rizzo, who ran the motor pool, "This here is a vehicle," played him magnificently. I particularly enjoyed his love-hate relationship with Buzz Watson, the civilian videographer and tech guru for the squad. The single funniest line in the series was when they're at the murder of a movie producer. Provenza says he's never heard of him. Buzz retorts, "He made talkies, sir." Just in general, one of the serious appeals of Major Crimes is the workplace banter among the various detectives. These are refreshingly real people with real lives outside the squad room and also nicely varying backgrounds. In the 4th season, they closed the season with a 5-episode storyline entitled Hindsight. This was one of the best stories they did, though I was less than impressed with the reveal as to who the killer actually was, mostly because they gave the storyline time to breathe and the investigation a chance to be more detailed than you can do in 42 minutes, especially since there's always a recurring subplot going on through a season independent of the crime of the week. The storyline had an impressive set of guests, most notably Jason Gedrick as a disgraced cop and Julianne Emery as a cop from another unit. While the 5th season was back to an episodic format, excepting the 3-parter White Lies, which saw Taylor shot and killed, the 6th season went with 3 multi-part storylines rather than 13 standalone episodes. Had the show continued, I suspect they would have continued with that format, but instead they were informed by TNT that this would be their final seasons. As final seasons go, it was good, if bittersweet, as they decided to kill off Rader. Having her diagnosed with a heart condition was irritating, not in the least because I've already seen Mary McDonnell play a beloved leader who was dying in Battlestar Galactica, and she's rapidly turning into a trope. However, leaving that irritant aside, the season was actually the perfect ending, with 3 excellent cases, the last of which brought the longest-running subplot on the franchise, the serial killer Philip Stroh, played to sociopathic perfection by Billy Burke, to a conclusion. The Stroh storyline goes back to the 4th season of The Closer, and introduced the character of Rusty Beck, a hustler who witnessed one of Stroh's murders, and whose growth as a character has been one of the most impressive aspects of Major Crimes, as Rusty has gone from a bitter young male prostitute to a law student on the inside track to join the DA's office when he passes the bar, and also Rader's adopted son. Graham Patrick Martin has done amazing work on this show, as Rusty isn't always the nicest or most together person, and he doesn't just have issues, he has entire subscriptions. His tumultuous relationship with Gustavo Wallace has been particularly well done, and it's not just the gay romance, but a complicated relationship that has given lots of room for the peaks and valleys of any relationship, regardless of gender. Major Crimes has very obviously been influenced by cop shows of the past, from Hill Street Blues, to Homicide, to The Shield, the show's opening credit sequence is done in the same style as The Shield, in fact, to, obviously, The Closer, and while it doesn't truly deserve to be in the upper echelon of great cop shows, it definitely is in the next tier. A solid, reliable, dependable, well-written show that took its characters and its situations seriously. One more great line from the recently completed final season as Rusty is watching an interrogation, and the detectives lie to the witness. "My God," Rusty says, "you guys lie even when you don't have to." Provenza smiles and says, "It centers us." I would also like to single out one particular episode that I enjoyed the heck out of. There's No Place Like Home in the second season, in which 1970s TV star Bailey was reunited with a bunch of other aging actors who also made their bones on 1970s TV. Marion Ross, Doris Roberts, Tim Conway, Paul Dooley, and Ron Glass, in a hilarious story about the stars of a medical drama from that decade who all lived in the same housing development where the landlord is killed. I am sad that I won't be seeing any new episodes of Major Crimes. I will miss Tao being nerdy, and Sanchez being angry, and Provenza being right all the time, and Flynn being crotchety, and Sykes being spectacularly competent, and Rusty being confused, and all the rest. The final episode took one last look at Rader's empty office, but also reaffirmed that the squad was still intact, with Provenza finally in charge. Rader was promoted over him after Johnson retired, and there was also a nice callback to the closer, as John Tenney's Fritz Howard mentions Johnson, with whom he has a relationship, as a kind of benediction to Provenza. Repeats of Major Crimes will likely continue to air on TNT, and the DVDs of past seasons are available as well. Finally, we have Cathode to Joy, where I praise a show in 15 seconds or less. The pilot episode of Black Lightning was fantastic. This is a wonderful new addition to DC's TV universe, and I really look forward to seeing where they go with it. For the Chronic Rift, this is Keith DeCandido with Couch Potato Salad.
So you're sitting here watching the video play, and suddenly you're looking at the video image of you on the screen, and you're like, yeah, my hair's wrong, something's wrong with my hair. You start playing a little bit, and you realize you just screwed it up even more. Anyway, okay, I've got to be perfectly honest. She loves putting us in the video. She loves it. And for the very reason she loves it, I don't love it. There's very few people who say that I didn't do. Hilton Blues is that's definitely right. But Hilton Blues is one of those shows I felt that went beyond the job. And showed us the characters and showed actual characters. Now, from the sound of the theater was something. We didn't talk a lot about it, so that's just yesterday night. It's a thousand years. Yeah, we played character development for good measure. But, see, my favorite show about a job that isn't really about the job is Rescue Me. If you really watch the show, it's maybe once per episode that they go out on a fire trip to actually do something. It was about the characters and their interaction with each other. I actually would love to see that more than an actual season. There's how many times you see the same thing of people going through the motions of trying to figure out who the killer is, the race. I would actually love to see a show where it's like, okay, in the middle of the show we'll do a quick cut and then move on to their development of characters, their story. So to me, I don't want to watch the job. I really don't. Sorry, but it's never interesting. So for that reason, I don't really watch the show. I really can't connect with those people. Now what I can connect with is Black Lightning. I saw the first episode the other night with my wife and was very happy with the way the show came out. For a first episode, also kind of at first it was just a little wonky. I thought it's going to be awkward. There's something weird about it. There's something but it's really tried after the first show. And I'm in for the long run. I think it's great. I love the actors. I didn't realize that the woman playing Black Lightning's wife from the very end was in the Doctor Who episode way back in 2005. It is the story with Simon Pegg and 4 or 500 of the giant monster of top reporter who the Doctor basically pushes her to do better. She's ambitious, but she's ambitious for the promotions, but she's not ambitious for actually getting the stories that need to be got, including what's wrong with this TV network that, the world is, the Earth itself is the way it is. She always struck me as an actress, and also just for her beauty. She's a beautiful woman. So it was really cool to see that she's going to be a regular. Now, the final review here that I want to talk about is my own review here for podcast. But there's a recent one that just started to my birthday, and I was very thrilled to see it. It's called Flip Florey's Super Saturday Board Game Serial, and I needed to put the picture up on the screen, not only to show you some sort of a logo, but because I needed to remember the exact name of the podcast, or as they call it, FFSSBGS, or FFSSBG Serial. It's a mouthful, but it's a great little show. And when I say little, he manages to keep these episodes between 30 and 40 minutes, which is perfect. Because sometimes some podcasts go on and on. I mean, this one was actually considering, when I say this one, I mean the Chronic Rift, we were considering a 2-hour podcast. Thank God we didn't do that. Days like this could get really awkward. Flip Florey was one of the co-hosts on the previous Flip the Table. And for the longest time, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I was right the first time, I always thought Flip the Table was named after him. But it's Flip the Table, it's a podcast about gaming. And what they would do is they would flip the format of the games and such. First, the first half of the podcast was their actual review of a board game. And I came on when they did $6 Million Man, was hooked, and just started listening to every episode, went back and listened to the old ones as well. And then the second half was playing a game of their own devising, using a theme of the game. There was like one for the IMDb game where they would try and guess who came closest as far as a rating for particular movies or actors or what have you. There's also the eBay game that they played, but it always had the theme of whatever the board game was. Now, Flip's kind of done something like that of sorts here, but he's, if I may say so, flipped it around. What he does is he brings in a guest, and it's just him and a guest, and they talk about a particular board game, and then what they do is they repurpose the board game with something else that the person who's there is very familiar with. So they might take a game like Jumanji, and I'm just making this one up off the top of my head here, and then repurpose it though so that it's Harry Potter. You see that actually a lot now these days anyway with a lot of these board games. You've got Operation for SpongeBob SquarePants, or I just recently saw Operation for Fallout. It's repurposing the game. So he's basically doing that, but with board games in general, and with almost any kind of franchise for the rebranding. By the way, Flip, if you ever get a chance and you want somebody to come on and talk about TV game show home game versions that are repurposed, let's talk. I'd love to come on the show. It's an awful lot of fun. Plus, he also does other segments. One of my favorites, and I know this is just going to sound weird, is I forget the exact title, but basically he and his guest smell a board game. Yep, they open the box, they smell the components. Oh, come on, don't even tell me for a moment you've never done that, because the smelling scent is one of our, I mean, obviously it's one of our 5 senses, but for me it's also memory. I actually have a particularly strong sense of smell, and I can actually remember people better if they're kind of still smelling the same way than when I met them years ago. And there's certain people I remember, an aunt in particular. And when I say scent, it could be positive or negative. In her case, it was always positive. That had a particular scent about her. Her home had a particular scent, and it just instantly felt familiar and safe. So to me, I see nothing wrong, and especially with me when I play some of these old games that I've got that I have in my collection and such. I don't see any problem with the fact that smelling the games. Smell them, I've still got my password game here. Now, this isn't old, so to actually smell this, actually, it's not bad. It's not bad when you think about it here. And in particular, here you go, the Magic Window. No real odor off the Magic Window cards. But anyway, there are just certain things that I'm rambling about scents right now because it's like I feel like I need to defend this. My wife thinks it's weird too, but one of my kids has the same ability to sort of connect people with odor and such. It's a fun podcast. You really should check it out if you are into any sort of gaming of any kind. If you're interested also in just checking out podcasts, it's a good one to start with because of the brevity. And he does it once a week. My only thing I would actually say to Flip is, and I know others on the Facebook page here that's here, it's an open group, I'll put a link up if you want to join, is there should be some transitions, some sound transitions and such. It would make the podcast, I don't know, I want to say flow, because the podcast definitely has flow, but Flip likes to walk down Game Board Town, the streets of Game Board Town there, and he, he's pretending and talking, he's describing things and such. When he runs into his guest, having some background music maybe as he's walking, or just even having a transition saying we're going to Game Board Town, would, I don't know, just add a little something extra to the podcast. But otherwise, a lot of fun. Yes, that Chronic, Mike, yes, the Chronic Rift. Chronic Rift hit, well, when we used to do the show back in the old days, the, what is it called? Public access. I couldn't think of the word for a moment. Back in the day, down in the old welding factory, that place definitely had its own kind of aroma and such. And then, of course, when we were also waiting for a TV show to finish taping, or when another TV show is coming in, they may have had a particular aroma to them as well. I'll put links up. You can find the show, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. Flip's covered it all as far as podcasting type programs, type apps. Why are words so difficult for me today? Let me take another sip. Maybe that'll help. But you can find them on all those particular apps, and I would wholeheartedly give it a thumbs up, even though I don't usually do thumbs up in these reviews. But a lot of fun. A lot of fun. So we've got a little time left here on the podcast. Let me tell you a little bit about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks, starting with next week. Now, next week, I'll be here live, but most of the show is going to be pre-taped because I've got on a guest who I'm going to interview this week. His name is Herbie J. Pilato. Now, Herbie and I have known each other for years and years and years. If you don't know the name, let me fill you in really quick on him here. He's an author. He is the president of the Classic TV Preservation Society, and he is the host of the upcoming TV show Then and Again with Herbie J. Pilato that's going to air on the Decades Network. And primarily he's coming in to talk about the TV show, but I also want to talk to him about a number of things regarding television and such. When I say author, he's the author of a number of great books, including this one here, Dashing, Daring, and Debonair. Let me just make sure I get the title right. TV's top male icons from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. This is one of my favorite of his books, although he's also the author of another one of my favorites, the Bionic book with stuff about $6 Million Man, the Bionic Woman. But I'm particularly fond of this one because it does have excerpts from a particular host of the Chronic Rift about his fandom, let's say, let's be safe, for Lee Majors and Adam West and Burt Ward. So if you get a chance, check that out. Now, Herbie is also, though, the president of the Classic TV Preservation Society, a group dedicated to basically preserving those TV shows, their values, their ideas, and promoting them. And that's the other thing, too. Don't just preserve them, you got to promote them as well. Herbie's, when it comes to today's TV, Herbie's not very impressed with a lot of what's on television because of the negativity, the anti-heroes. The anti-heroes and such, there's nothing wrong with an anti-hero, but when that's all you focus on and you don't give anybody any light or any hope, it can be a little sad. And I kind of agree with him. It's why I tend to watch a lot of old television myself, including my favorite there, Battlestar Galactica. As much as I did like Sci-Fi Channel's reimagining, I'll be honest with you, I didn't complete the series. I made it all the way into, I think it was season 4. Just a little too dark. Too dark. I don't know. Maybe just that's the way our whole society has gotten these days. Okay, now Mike points out Stranger Things. You know, Stranger Things strikes that balance between darkness and the fun of the 80s. I don't know what it is. I do watch that show, and I do like it. Now, I don't know where Herbie stands on that. That'll be interesting. I'll bring that up with him in the interview as well. I'll throw out some of these shows and see what he thinks about them. And we're going to talk about Then and Again, his TV show on Decades, where he interviews people from the past, from the TV shows we love. He's had on Burt Ward, Robert Conrad, trying to think, Stanley Livingston from My Three Sons, I believe, was on the show. So it's only going to run like 6 to 8 episodes. This is a trial run, I think, for the series and such. But it's really exciting that he's getting to do this, and these people are taking the time to come in and talk with him there. After that, we're going to be taking a look at the 50th anniversary of the Planet of the Apes. Didn't believe that. I was kind of shocked. That one went by me almost, that this is the year for the anniversary. And my guest, one of them anyway, he was kind of surprised when I brought it up and said, yeah, it's the 50th anniversary, and I know you're going to want to talk about this. So he'll be in here with that. That's Dan Greenfield from over at 13thdimension.com, who's been with me on a number of the Batcave podcasts. Following that, I've also got an interview coming up with author Jeremy Brown. Jeremy was on the podcast a long time ago talking about his first novel that was Christmas themed. Since then, he's published 2 science fiction novels, and he's coming on. We're going to spend the hour talking about his books, his love of science fiction, and other things as well. I'm sure he'll be bringing something to the table included in this. We've got more in-review episodes coming up. We'll also have some other discussions. That was the nice thing about doing the what we're excited about in 2018 episode with Kevin Lauderdale. Because in looking through that list, I was like, wow, there's a lot of things we could be covering here. One of the things you're going to start also seeing more of is more promotion for the Rift. I kind of did this quietly. I didn't even push anybody who'd been on the show before to really come on yet, and I hope they understand it was because I didn't want to give the impression that this was going through full force if it wasn't going to work, because we've stepped up to the plate a couple of times and tried to revive this, and it hasn't. But now that I see that the tech is working well, audio issues, I hopefully, according to Mike and Dan, I'm sounding better, so that's a good thing, because frankly I sounded like I was podcasting from a well the first 2 times, so I'm hoping I'm sounding a lot better this time. But I didn't want to say anything and then commit to it and then find out that this was falling apart. And that's why I also thank Herbie and Jeremy for agreeing to come on as guests to talk about their works and promote their works here on a show that hasn't yet really found its full legs, but I'm feeling more and more confident. So you're going to start seeing more promotions for the Chronic Rift. I'm going to start pushing everybody now who's been a part of the show in the past to start saying, hey, step up, let's come on board. You don't have to do the video. You can come on and do the audio, that's fine. I'll be the only one here. We can split screen it with you guys. I can put a picture of you there. Mike saying loud and clear. That's fantastic. That's what I want to hear, because it bothered me when I was, especially with the audio version of the podcast that I put into the feed, because basically here's the live one, then I'll put this live one also up on YouTube for those to watch as well, and then I also put an audio version into the network feed that we run through Libsyn. And I listened to the first episode and I was like, God, I sound like garbage. Kevin sounded fine, Julio Angel Ortiz sounded fine, and I realized that both of them were using these. So I was like, let's just keep it simple then. Let me just do this. That's about it, I think, for this episode. We may have to call it a little early for this week. I didn't want to do that, but I can't think of anything else that we need to cover right now. I want to thank, by the way, Keith and Dan for contributing to this episode with their reviews. I also want to thank, though, Dan and Mike Fichera for being on the line here with me and kind of feeding me things along here to sort of keep the conversation going. Part of that soft thing is that since I haven't been doing a whole lot of promotion, I know we're not getting a lot of people watching at the moment. Hey, Stephanie, my colleague from work, or my former colleague from work, is watching right now. Just want to say hello to her. Also to Megan, who's also on watching as well. Hello, and thank you for watching. But I think we're going to call it quits for today. Just a little early. We made it through 54 minutes. But, Can't all be that. Folks, make sure that you're heading on over to crossnews.com and all the podcasts that is Audio Touch with Michael Buckley. He will be joining us shortly here on the podcast. He just wants to make sure he wants to do the video, so he wants to make sure he's got the right background, he wants to make sure his audio is right, so he will be joining us